You're laughing your ass off at my team.
There's also...
shut up!
He's going to be the number one average you play from this year in the
No chance.
Maybe besides Dylan Moore.
No chance.
Okay. No, Cornwall's got, Dylan Moore, that's it.
No chance. There's no chance.
I don't like his release, so stop talking about it.
I didn't say it once, but since you brought it up... Francis!
I just got
Francis!
I just got concussed.
Doesn't care.
Tom Mitchell doesn't tug on the ball. Tom Mitchell kicks the winning goal and he got 140. Vice captain right now.
Welcome back to SuperCoach Masters. I'm Geordie. I'm here with Big J from the Centre Bounce. How you going, mate?
Oh, mate, I'm great. It's nice Sunday afternoon talking SuperCoach. What else can you do?
Mate, I've saved the best to last, so to speak. This is, I reckon, it has to be the most difficult line this year. Right up there with the rucks. I think the defence is a little bit more trickier because the best primos all have a really an early buy. So it's going to be interesting to pick your brain on this one. I just want to thank all the SuperCoach Masters subscribers and all the ones that have bought some stuff from the merch shop. Congratulations, guys. Can't really see it.
Holy moly.
Thanks heaps for supporting the channel. And I hope you like this video. Me and Jay are going to break down some of the best picks from the defense, starting with Sam Flanders. Maybe before a week or two ago, before he was injured, it was a bit, more of a consideration. But Sam Flanders now with that back injury and the early buy, he just ruled out completely now?
Well, I'm quite surprised he's still 19% owned. I guess a lot of people have come in and then, probably haven't touched their team for a couple of weeks, or maybe auto selects, that kind of thing. I think going back to what you were saying, right? Early buy and then the injury as well. And I think kind of Rioli and then Noble coming into the team as well. Flanders is a little bit like Sheasel, where I think he's slowly getting good enough to play anywhere and he'll get the ball. But when you've got two guys that have come in and kind of taken what was a lot of his role last year, it makes it quite hard pick. I mean, he's the highest priced defender, probably top 5 highest price in SuperCoach this year. Too many question marks.
Yeah, he had a really, really high kind of floor, which we really liked about the Sam Flanders pick, playing more in the midfield. But the bit of an injury niggle, and at that price, I think it's safe to maybe put him on the back burner. Say if you've picked another premium and they've underperformed, maybe you can go a bit of a straight swap to him after his buy if he's performing and you miss that buy. But to start with Flanders, I think there are better options. And speaking of better options, mate, Harry Sheasel from North Melbourne shows that he can score well in the defence, well in the midfield. Last North intra-club match played purely as a midfielder. The one before that, he spent a bit of time forward, which maybe sent some concerns to some people looking for any reason to not get anyone from the round 12 bye. There's just so many premiums there, Jay. Can we expect a Harry Sheasel in your side?
He's currently my D1. I mean, the kid's a freak. He's only 20, and he's the second most expensive SuperCoach player in our defenses. Next year, he'll be like Dacos. He'll probably only be mid-eligible, potentially mid-forward. But he'll probably end up like Petrarca, where it was like, like Horn Francis last year, where it was like 0.5%, not enough forward, not enough mid-time to get that like DPP. Harry Sheasel, wherever the ball goes, he'll go. And he just kind of boosts up his SuperCoach scoring. 54% ownership is... You would hope that everyone starts him, or at least has a plan to get him in, because no early buy means that if you don't have him and he scores comparatively the same as what he did last year, you're spending 2 or 3 trades to get this guy into your team when you should have just started him.
Yep. Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you, Jay. 54%. Where do you rank Sheasel in terms of premium round 12 buy players? So you got your Horn Francis, you got Sherry, you got your Bont, you got your Butters, and there's a slather of Tom De Konings, Tim English if you're so inclined, and maybe Rosie or Chera, those types. Where do you see
Parker
Harry
and Daniel in the forward line too?
Exactly, but everyone's got to get there. Everyone's got to get Kleb, and I don't think he's going to be a stepping stone. He'll be probably someone you're keeping for a while, Kleb Daniel. So you've got to have to also figure something out with him in the team as well, mate. So where do you put Harry Sheasel?
Well, no one at Carlton's ahead of him. Probably no one at Port Adelaide's ahead of him. Maybe Horn Francis, maybe, but I don't think so.
No Butters?
I'd say he's probably number 2. It's either you have Bont or you don't have Bont. There's a lot of question marks between people like picking him and not picking him. Is he too expensive? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Harry Sheasel's number 1. You just don't not have guns in your team. And I'm sorry, Maddie, you don't have Harry Sheasel. Get him in your team, but yeah,
Don't do it, Matty.
You just need him. Like you need this player. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like not having Max Gorn a few years ago in the ruck line. Like you just don't not have Max Gorn. Like you just don't have Harry Sheasel.
I know, and Matty's going to be
AFL
watching this,
pieces.
and now you're going to force him to get him, and it's ruining everything. Matty, don't get him. It's a bad pick. Look, Sheasel will probably be in the top 3 for that buy. I really rate Horn Francis and Sherry. I don't see a team without Sherry that I respect. If there's a ruck combo that doesn't have Tristan Sherry, and I'm not liking it, and obviously the forward line, there are better options, other options, but Horn Francis, I think, is absolutely going to explode this year. 118, only a couple of years into the system, mate. We can expect some 120s, I think.
Yeah, I think probably like I wouldn't be surprised if he comes out and does a 125 this year. Just the way that they're using him for the ball and, getting majority CBAs. We saw last year a big drop halfway through the season where like he didn't get a lot of those kickouts, and I'm not sure about yourself, but a lot of people jumped off.
Yeah,
like it was like, no longer half back. He's going to start playing mid, and half the competition jumped off Sheasel, and then two weeks later they were like, oh shit, we're going to get Sheasel back. So yeah, he's just too good.
Yeah, mate, I was the one who kept the faith with Harry. I think also we're expecting, a lot of people are expecting North Melbourne to win a lot more games in 2025. That can also contribute to Cheezel getting some bigger scores. So,
well, it's just natural progression as well, right? I mean, the kid's only 20. You expect him to go from like a 79% to an 85% game time, which means that he should receive more of it, and that's probably 2 or 3 kicks or a handball extra. I mean, that's just scoring going up too.
Yeah, so I think Harry Cheezel is probably my number one must need in the back line. I think you've got to get him. Unless you're Matty, don't get him, Matty. Stick with your Luke Ryan pick. And let's go to Luke Ryan now. Big plus over Harry is he's got the best buy you can possibly have. Round 13 with only St Kilda. He'll cover you through all those buys and doesn't have an early buy. However, old man Luke Ryan has been told directly by the coach to stop chipping around the back line to pump up your stats. And since then, I remember he went from 125 to 130 average to like about 100 just in those last couple of games. He still had a couple of good scores, but Lukey Ryan crashed a little bit to earth as soon as he was told stop, pumping up the stats, mate. Is that the big concern?
I think so as well. And I think a lot of us have Freo picked definitely top 8, but pushing towards a top 4 position.
Yeah.
And with Luke Ryan getting majority of his points from kickouts, I mean, not all of them, but a lot of points from kickouts still being Freo's number 1 kickout taker. You just expect the ball maybe not going to be in that position as much. He'll push up the ground a bit like a Tom Stewart and do a few of those kind of things, maybe hold the opposition in their defense in 50, forward 50. But yeah, I just don't think he's going to see as much. As the team gets better, you can't just rely on one player. And, maybe with the Hayden Young now taking a lot more of that mid time. I mean, he's injured at the moment, but scheduled to take a lot more midfield time. It's Ryan or Clark down back, and then that's it.
Speaking of Clark, we should speak about
he'll drop in price, but you don't have to start him.
Jordan Clark?
No, Luke Ryan.
Who do you like better out of Jordan Clark and Luke Ryan? Obviously, both have a really nice buy. There's about, maybe 60, 70K difference. Same teams, nice buy. Who would you pick if you had to pick one?
Well, currently I have neither, but if gun to my head I had to pick one, I think it's hard to go past the player who's been top 5 SuperCoach defender for the last 5 years, and that's Luke Ryan.
Yeah.
So if you said I had to, Luke Ryan would probably be the player. Jordan Clark, he did have a fantastic last year, but I think there's still a little bit of question marks around him. He's not as expensive because there is those question marks. And you look at the other players in that 560K range. I mean, Nick Newman's obviously injured, but Nazia's got questions. Ridley's got questions. Nick Martin's got questions. Traditionally, it's always been those guys that you hope are either going to jump in price or historically have actually dropped a little bit in price. This is where Bailey Dale has been previously around this price. And, his scoring last year wasn't fantastic. So I think there's a few more question marks on a Jordan Clark than there is on a Luke Ryan.
Yeah.
And if Luke Ryan ends up being a bit more expensive, you just sideways trade him to somebody. There's no loss.
That's an interesting point. I really like that. Jordan Clark, I think he's just, I mean, you can do so much with 70K. If I had to pick one of these Freo blokes, none of them in my team, I would probably lean towards Clark. I guess more natural progression. And as Luke Ryan is getting to the age where they start declining a bit. And I think
Potentially, yeah.
yeah, when the coach told him to stop hogging it, I had a look at his stats. You know, Jordan Clark really didn't take too much of a dip in average then. But I think with these blokes, I think you'd be looking at them because of their buy mainly.
Yeah.
You could probably sideways if you want, but if you're picking them at that price, you probably want them to be in the best top 8 kind of defender. I believe Jordan Clark can improve on 104 average. Luke Ryan,
Most probably.
if I had to guess what he's going to score, I would go maybe 110 or something. A little
Okay,
bit
so you reckon
longer.
like 5 points drop? Because a lot of his score was from, as you say, that kind of start of the season, middle of the season. I think it was around maybe round 16, 17, 18 where the drop off really did happen.
Yeah.
And you look at Ryan, like 40 possession game, and it was like, mate, pull your head in right now, you know?
I thought he was actually doing really good for them, you know, with his switches, but apparently,
me too.
But apparently wasn't good enough for the coach. So there you go, the 2 Freo boys. Now, Lockie Whitfield, correct me if I'm wrong, this is just my opinion. I think Lockie Whitfield is the best defender you can get in the back line that has the early double buy. Do you have anyone ahead of him selection-wise in that kind of bracket?
No, it's great. I think as well, a lot of people maybe haven't got their head around kind of how the loophole works as well. Like if you've got everyone who doesn't have an early buy and they play on field, you can't get a captaincy score. So take the advantage of having a Whitfield or a Zorko or heck, even a Flanders, a couple of these players. Have 1 or 2 of them in your starting team, because if you don't, that means no double chance for the captain. I love Whitfield. Half the team's left and he's still there. The only thing that could actually help him a little bit was if he's cheaper in SuperCoach, but we know how devastating he is. He's currently in my team at the moment, and he's not left since the start of the game opening this year.
Really?
He's just too good. Just dodgy head knocks. That's the only thing with Whitfield is you go for a tackle or gets a bad bump and your heart jumps a little bit. Hey, do I now have to trade my primo? And then 10 minutes later he's back on the field. So yeah.
He's not usually the most, when you think of kind of a consistency, Lockie Whitfield's not really the injury kind of avoidant player that we wish he was, but he's got such a tasty role as that kick-ins and the 1-2 gatherer. I guess, you know, he's prone to a bit of a tag, but, you know, he gets so many kick-outs. He really raises that floor. I love Lockie Whitfield, but every time I chuck him in my team, I keep on thinking, oof, I really like Tom Green instead if I was to get one of those GWX boys at a 20K discount price. But then I'm thinking, there's not many good players in the defense. So Lockie Whitfield at 11% of teams, I think he'll be a pretty good pick. I'm actually banking on the fact that a lot of the rookies will get dropped like they usually do by the round 2 or 3 buy, and I have plenty of loopholes there. So it happens every year, mate. I mean...
Yeah. I mean, you always take a leak or someone like that in your backline if you want to be a bit cheeky, but Whitfield as well. You talk about the tag. If you go tag him in the midfield or the wing, generally halfbacks don't get tagged that often. He just goes and takes kickouts. Like, it doesn't really affect him as much. It's not like he's a midfielder that, you know, like a McRae, for example, that is desperate to get the ball. And if he doesn't, then he drops in scoring. Like, multiple avenues. And I think some of the heat maps from last year showed that Whitfield kind of can play in a lot of different positions. A lot of it was mid. A lot of it was everywhere. Yes, he took majority kick out. I loved 2 years ago when we used to see Dacos bolt for the defender goals when the kick out was happening. Whitfield does that from the middle, and I'm just like, yes, extra points in SuperCoach. It's so good.
It's such a good feeling, man. I picked him up after his bye last year, and he really rewarded me. And he's going to be hard to not start. The only thing that can put him in doubt is if you're picking a premium and you want, you know, to get the full games when you know that he's going to be missing an extra one. That's the only thing you can really think of. Maybe a bit of injury history, but I think a lot of people have Giants further up the ladder. I don't know how you have him. I have him a little bit lower this year. I mean, you know, with the likes of Kelly and Cornelio getting a little bit more rust, the best player was like Hogan, and he's pretty up there as well. So for me, I kind of think GWS is going to slide a bit, which could even help Whitfield scoring. Where do you have GWS on the ladder? Just that's for curiosity's sake.
I have them outside the top 8. I think probably about 9 or 10th this year. I think losing Peatling, losing Cumming, losing Perryman, it's a lot. It's a lot of good mature age talent going. And I think I've always loved the amount of depth that GWS has had as a team. They always seem to be able to pull the next best player out of the VFL, all the state leagues, and they just come in and slot into their team and do quite well.
Yeah.
I think the cliff has to come at some point, and I think that's kind of time now for GWS. So a little bit of a fall. Cool. Next year, once all the kids figure out where they're playing, the younger players, back to competing for finals again.
Yep, love that. Now that's a pretty good summary on Whitfield. Let's talk about Zorko. I hear a couple of people are liking Zorko. I hate him. I mean, I can't think of a. I got about 20 blokes ahead of him. Am I missing something? I mean, this is just my personal opinion. Dane Zorko, I think he's turning 35 this year or something.
Yep. That's
too old. I mean, I know he played 23 games last year, average 110. I just don't like the pick, mate. What am I not seeing?
Look, it's a no from me. I mean, I'm just looking at his stats. Yes, he did okay in SuperCoach and obviously top 5 or 6 being selected this year. But I think a lot of it, preseason hype comes down to just majority of kickouts. It's a fantastic avenue of scoring and guaranteed 4 points, or I think it's 3 points every time you kick it, not to the opposition. So there's something to be said there. But age, durability for myself as well. I'm more than happy to let someone else pick up a Zorko. I have someone different, and then I get him at 70k cheaper. Because a bad game or two's coming. He's going to get suspended halfway through the season after he kicks somebody or just tweaks a hammy being 35. It's a no pick for me. I have seen a few, and hence the 3% ownership, but there's some real ballsy people, man. I think one of the big things too, been looking at Ashcroft in the middle a little bit. Brisbane's early run's decent, and I think that might be why a few people are looking at players like him. Let me one sec. So Geelong first, round 0 doesn't matter. You've got Sydney, which is a new team. Round 2 is West Coast, so free win there. Richmond after their bye in round 4, and then the Bulldogs. So maybe you're expecting to jump a little bit ahead with Zorko, but similar to Whitfield, I mean, 1 out of the first four or 5 games he doesn't play. So it's a lot of points to leave on the bench.
Mate, I think how many 34-year-olds are averaging 110 and then go up next year? I just think there's no natural progression in him. There's got to be some regression in his scoring at the very minimum. Even if they got an easy run as a defender, you can't always bank like that. Sometimes the ball might not even get there. I know Richmond and West Coast, they do leak a little bit of defensive points, but Dane Zorko, he surely is not going to play 23 games and go at 110. If I got a Dane Zorko and someone else has got a Whitfield, man, I'm pretty scared.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think if Kadeem Coleman wasn't as injury prone as what he is at the moment, if he was back fit and firing, those 3% would probably drop down to about 0.5. That's definitely got something to do with it there. When more players just taking a lot of the ball out of the back line, we'll see what happens. I'm more than happy to bring in whoever, but Dane Zorko's a big no at the moment.
Yeah, he's a massive no for me. Let's move on to Jeremy McGovern at the same price as him. On the surface level, he doesn't scream like a lot of value because of how injury prone he is. However, he's probably got one of the best buys in the comp. He only misses that one game. He doesn't have the early buy, and he shares it with a bunch of other players where you probably, it's fair to say, you don't have more than 3 premiums in that buy with Jeremy McGovern. A promising sign about his injuries, there weren't really that many soft tissues. It was the knock he copped and the that he missed the games for. It wasn't really because his body was falling apart. It was a contact injury. So that's a little bit of a shining light. However, Jeremy McGovern is a bit of a risky one, isn't he?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I can 100% see the upside. And the people that picked him last year alongside an Elliot Yeo, they just went really well at the start of the season. I mean, you got 2 guys that ended up almost being keepers for the entire year. I think a lot of the selection and hype around a McGovern at the moment is just that West Coast is going to be terrible. They are going to be dog shit, and they've just lost 2 good players. Well, at least one good player out of that back line. So he's now coming in. He's probably going to take majority kickouts again, and you'd expect alongside whoever's taking kickouts for Richmond that the ball's going to be down there all the time. Yeah. Does it mean that a few other players do get a bit more involved though? now that Barras is no longer in the team, potentially. I think McGovern is probably still their number one strongest defender, and generally they take the best forward. So key defenders don't do great in Supercoach, but they get a lot of points for intercepts. So if you pick him, if you want something different, I understand. Not everyone can have the same team. But yeah, you'd have to have some real inside news that, hey, he's fit, ready to go, he's firing. Yeah. They want other players to take the big bodies and him just to do what he does. So
that would be music to my ears if I heard that. But yeah, at the moment, a bit too risky. I mean, I can see him getting 12 kickouts a game. Like, I can see him having a complete monopoly on that.
Yeah, he will.
And that's...
if you look at some of the kick-out takers as well from last year, I mean, Barras took a couple, he's out. Alex Witherden, I'm pretty sure, got delisted. He was number 3 on their list for kickouts. So, it's McGovern and Duggan, really.
We've got Baker playing the back line.
Baker playing back as well. But does he take the kick-out or does he take the ball after the kick-out? That's kind of the big question.
There'll be some good preseason games, mate. Can't wait to watch them. I'm looking for a pod, but haven't found one. Jack Sinclair had the hamstring scans, came back all good. Good to go. 24% of teams. Very nice buy. Very nice player. Only 24% of teams. What are we liking about the Jack Sinclair pick?
Well, I think just like how well he played last year, right? I mean, he kind of came out of nowhere. Let me just pull up his stats 1 second. Just kind of came out of nowhere. I think he moved from mid to halfback or vice versa and just went bang, hence the DPP. Takes almost majority of their kickouts. He's kind of half-half with Nazaya. But if he's not playing as much a halfback and wants to play a bit more mid-ball, they need something at St Kilda, man. I don't know if you know many St Kilda fans, but they're desperate for some final success. And I think if Jack Sinclair, wherever he plays, he'll do that for them. Not currently in my team, but I can see why people have picked him. He's just too injury prone now. I hear preseason injury and that's it. Like, jump off the train. I've got Nazaya in my team at the moment. I think if Sinclair moves out of the spot, loses a bit more halfback position, well then, hey, I can get more kick-ins from Nazaya, which means more points. But to be honest, he feels a little bit overpriced. Jack Sinclair. And that's obviously dictated by the average. So whatever he averaged is what he scored. But I feel like he's a little bit overpriced for what we might get for him this year.
Oh, yeah. It could very well be. Man, I really do like the Jack Sinclair pick. Not maybe because of process of elimination. There's not many ones I like more than him. That's probably leading it because everyone that has a really nice buy, I have below him, like the Luke Ryans, the Jordan Clarks. Nazai's an interesting one. We'll get to him in a minute. But yeah, he's got... I think he's a super player. And I think the defenders, they're not like the midfielders. They don't peak at around 27. I think 29 and... They can still chip the ball around in the back line and go for the 30s. But Jack Sinclair, 24% of teams, with only that one buy with Fremantle, you could go worse.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, it's, as you say, early buy. And I think the price as well, like you spend 2K, you get into McGovern come round 3. You know, this player that it's okay to sideways trade your primos at that point in time. Miss out on a couple, cool, no worries. I think Sinclair's kind of that break glass type player for me. If he doesn't work out, you've only lost 2 rounds worth of scoring. Hopefully it's 40 points and not 80 in terms of difference, and you just sideways trade to anybody. So it's not bad.
Yeah. And Dan Houston, who he misses round 0, which I see so much confusion on the bloody things. Why is Houston in your team?
The funniest thing ever, man.
Mate, look, Houston's ready to go for round 1, and that's when Supercoach starts, and that's all you need to know. Yeah. However, he does have a busy buy. He has a big buy with a couple of other teams, and he has the second buy, which is not that as big as a problem. But Dan Houston, how is he going to be used at the Pies? We don't know. There's too many unknowns for me to like it, even as a Collingwood supporter. We've got Josh Dacos in the back line as well. And, you know, it's going to be like, is he going to be the main man doing kickouts? If so, that makes it more enticing. If not, then... You know, I'm probably going to leave it. I think, what are your thoughts on Houston?
I'm more than happy to say wait and see with Dan Houston, especially because he's got the early buy, and use him as an upgrade later on. I think there's a few players, as you say, just looking at kickouts at the moment. I mean, Jeremy Howe took the most, Darcy Moore took the next. Maynard took the next. The only person out of that list who is no longer at the club is John Noble, who's number 4 on the list. So if Houston comes in and just takes Noble's kickouts, he's not getting a lot of scoring down back. The points need to come from somewhere. It's tough. When I look at players like this, good players who are good accumulators going to other teams, where do the points come from, man? Natural progression out of a Dacos, a few other players doing well as well. What is he valued at? 106? I can probably see 100 average, but I don't think there's a huge amounts of value in that pick. Massive preseason watch.
Yeah.
Look at the game, see where he is. And the sad thing is we don't get him round 0. So we can't even see where he's going to line up. It is the biggest gamble in Supercoach. People talk about other players. Dan Houston is like, do you pick him? He does well, you're on heaven, right? Yeah. But if he doesn't do well, he scores you a 90 or an 80. You've spent $575K for a 90 or an 80. So it's not great.
I will say that Dan Houston at Port didn't get as many kickouts as I thought he did get. And I kind of see if Collingwood paid so much to get him over, I think they're going to really value his kicking. He's such a good kick. They're either going to make him, just put him number 1 for kickouts, or they're going to be the person they look to in that second kick for after the kickouts. But yeah, Houston's got such a lethal boot. It'll be absolutely ridiculous if they don't use him coming out of the defensive 50 when there's a behind scored. It has to be used in some way. As I said,
do you think as a Pie supporter, do you think he slots straight into where Noble played, kind of that half-back position? Or have you heard anything that, hey, look, they're going to move a few other players around? I mean, Chris played a little bit of forward. Not Chris, Jeremy Howe played a little bit of forwards at times. A few other players. Do you think people are going to make way for Houston? Or do you think, hey, what are you hearing?
I think he's not going to be a straight swap for John Noble. I think he's going to take a little bit more of, a general type back there. But then when they started putting Josh Dacos back there, I'm thinking, are they trying to get Nick Dacos output from Josh Dacos in the back line? And that's when I get a bit, okay, I like Houston. Maybe if Josh wasn't there, but he's going to be a rebounding defender as well. Houston didn't have to compete with anyone, really. If you're rating, Burden or Farrell or all those other numpties back there in Port Adelaide, Houston was the man. And I thought he was going to be the man in the back line, but when Josh Dacos is added to the mix, I'm not as interested anymore.
Too many question marks.
Not enough time to see him. If we see some pracky matches, or the kickouts, he's the go-to man, maybe, but then still you want to see it in round 0.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the big thing with me. I mean, 13% owned. They're probably all Collingwood fans. Maybe spend the extra cash, get a McGovern or someone else in, and you're happy.
So risky. Nick Martin. I can safely say that I have not thought about Nick Martin in any kind of way. Owned him last year and it was nice. And I loved him in the back line as an absolute free player. No one going near. When they started using him a little bit more up the ground, I was thinking, I have no interest in this guy. If they play him in the midfield, like some rumors suggest, I like him even less.
Yeah, I think Dacos started it off, and Harry Sheezel definitely did it a little bit last year and whatnot. Every team's trying to pick up their next Harry Sheezel, Nick Dacos, and I think Nick Martin can do it. If you look at a lot of his games last year, I think there was one game potentially I'm just looking at it now, 2 games last year that were under 90% time on ground, and they were both 88%. So he can run for days. He can play majority game time. It's where a lot of his scorings come from. But it's definitely one to watch. The fact that they have round 0 really helps. Nick Martin may slot into a lot of people's teams after round 0. It looks like they're going to play him a bit more mid, bit more wing, running up and down. And he's put on a bit of size too. So teams shuffle things around. I think Essendon's one of those teams where they're desperate for final success. Means that they're going to try new things and move players around. And there's always opportunities that come with that. He's not in my team at the moment, but I have thought about it a little bit. Definitely post-buy, look to chuck him into your side if he's doing really well, but it's a rough one. I love the player. I think he's fantastic.
I love the time on ground, mate. I think that's one of his biggest attractive points. I did see him float too much forward and do well in that forward role where he kicked a couple of late goals in a couple of games. I don't want Nick Martin there kicking goals. I want him and the backline fixing up his disposal efficiency, which has always been the massive letdown he is. And plus, he has another extra bye with Hawthorn. So it's a no from me, unless I
He
hear
had
something substantial.
he had 35 kickouts last year. With the amount of players I think that are running through that Essendon backline, I think that might drop down to 5. So I just don't think it's going to happen.
And according to my memory, mate, correct me if I'm wrong, if you've got stats in front of you, the amount of kickouts was highly more substantial in the first half of the year than the second half. I can't remember him doing too much kickouts in the second half of the year, Nick Martin. So
yeah, no, it definitely was. I think a couple of players may have come back, or Brad Scott changed his mind in terms of game plan. And then first half of the season definitely was. I mean, that's where you saw some of the big scores like 136s and things like that, and really punish those people that didn't pick him up. Because from memory, he was like 500k at the start of last year, and
I think it was even less.
Yeah, it was a great picker, similar to a Flanders, good starting pick, and then really hurt people that didn't have him.
Yep. Well, let's move on. We talked about Jordan Clark, Ridley, and Newman are injured. The next best one on the list is Wanganeen-Malira, mate. I love him as a pick. I'm going to expect there's some natural progression with Wanganeen-Malira. It's only, I think it was like maybe 4 years or something like that. And he looks really good back
this
there.
Year will be his 4th year.
4th year. And I saw him training, and there's a nice little kind of snippet of all his touches in one of the practice matches. He looked phenomenal. So if I was hoping Sinclair would be out, and it would be a nice kind of cheeky swap to Wanganeen-Malira, and he'll probably get a bit of an uptick because Sinclair being out, but he's not. So he's also got a very friendly buy. Him and Sinclair for me are really in strong consideration this point of the year.
Yeah, definitely. I think he suffered a little bit from the Sam Walshes, where Nuzaya ended up being 60 to 70 points at halftime, and then ended up with a 90 in Supercoach. Just the disposal efficiency kills him, and that really does hurt in the second half of the game where the point crunch starts to happen.
Yep.
If he can kind of boost that up a little bit, either by, not being a dodgy kick, which could be a midfield problem. Midfield gets better. They now go for the ball. Or just him kind of touching a few more with Sinclair not being there. Perfect pick. He slotted straight into my team. I think it's a really good price point too. If you're not keen on a Sicily, if you're not keen on a Bailey Dale or a Tom Stewart, for example, 20k more gets you kind of this year's, you'd hope, breakout player. So, he's currently in my team. I think from memory, he's going to take majority kickouts as well, which is what you want, especially if Sinclair's moving to more of a midfield role. There's no one else there. I mean, they're not going to give Bonner the ball because he's been pretty sure Bonner's delisted, right?
Yes,
he's not going to give Bonner the ball.
That being said, we've got that Showmaker who probably might come in for Bonner.
If Sinclair leaves majority halfback and now starts playing mid, Bonner's no longer in the team. That's top number 2 and 3 out of the top 3 kickouts gone. I don't think Sean Maker's going to take that much. I've heard some reports he's not even best 22. He's competing with a couple of other people for best 22 spots as well. So we could just have Naz like majority ball. They love his run as well. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But it predicted breakout player for the year for me, I think.
Sinclair did, interestingly enough, last 3 games of the season. This is just from memory. I think he had 0 CBA. So I was thinking, is this a sign of things to come? That has decided we like Sinclair better in the backline, or maybe some of the injuries to Philippou and Paddy Dow pushing back in the midfield. But I kind of saw a bit of a pattern last year. I'm like, okay, they really like him in the defense. I think he had 3 games of 0 CBAs the last 3 games. Like, they like Sinclair in the backline. So it could be one of those ones, but maybe they can push him back in there to cover that Philippou and Paddy Dow loss.
They need midfield depth, and they need midfield run, and they just need midfield help. I mean, Steele came out before the trade period and said, "God, please help us in this midfield. We need some midfield help." Brad Crouch is not doing his things anymore, and
he's definitely not.
Sinclair, I don't have the stats on hand, but would like to check out his kind of stats when he played midfield, how many games they won versus playing majority halfback, because I have a feeling it was a lot better in that midfield position. A lot of teams now having kind of a pacey, smallish type player that can run from the middle. Sinclair kind of fills that role, so we'll see. we'll see preseason games.
Yep, it'll be an interesting one, man. I think Wanganeen-Malira, you can't really go too wrong with him. You can't.
No, the buy is phenomenal. I mean, a lot of people, as you say, Sheasel and a few others that all have round 12 buys. Like Nazai just walks straight in and says, "Hey, mate, how you going?" Maybe.
All right, man. Let's get stuck into Maxi Holmes. In 19% of teams, one of the most picked premium mid-forward eligibility. Are we expecting a big breakout from Maxi Holmes this year? Well, we must be expecting a big one because Tom Stewart is cheaper than him and he's had a big, extensive history. He's a young player. How do you like Maxi?
To be honest, I never even thought about him until you said, "Hey, 19% owned." I'm like, holy moly, this guy is number 9 in terms of ownership in the backline.
Crazy.
19% is a lot. I think a lot of people are expecting something from him comparable to what they saw last year, plus the natural progression, which would mean, maybe another 10 points or so. And if you get that for 533K, you're laughing. For myself, he's never really been that guy, unfortunately. Sorry, Max, if you're watching this. Sorry. Don't shoot the messenger.
He does watch. He's regularly.
There you go. Disposal efficiency kills him. I'll go back to the Sam Walsh's. I feel like Max Holmes has the same thing. So remember last year, a lot of the time he would be 60 to 70 points at halftime, and all the Max Holmes owners were like, "Yeah, we're finally going to get a big score," and then he ends up with like a 95. Disposal efficiency just kills him. Maybe there's a bit of a change at Geelong's team potentially. We'll talk about SDK and a few other players moving around, which could open a bit more for Max Holmes.
Yeah.
But Tom Stewart's still in the team, a few other guys. I don't know where the extra point's going to come from, apart from him doing better. But yeah, it's a rough one. He's not in my team.
Look,
I've only got one Geelong player at the moment. That's Bailey Smith. So
yeah. Well, I see a world where Max Holmes averages more than someone like Wanganeen-Malira, but at that buy, you're taking. It's not worth it. Maybe Max Holmes is going to go bonkers. I mean, from what I've seen, he has what it takes. He's got a nice, friendly role. The worries with maybe Tommy Stewart's decline, maybe Max Holmes gets more attention. I don't think he got much attention at all last year. It's bound to come. But I do think there is a bit of progression there. Maybe with the buy, it's a little bit trickier to kind of trust that pick.
Yeah, definitely. I'm just looking at the kick-out numbers at the moment. I mean, he's not even in the top 4 for that club. Mitch Duncan's on there, but you'd think maybe Mitch Duncan might not get as much of the ball this year. But even guys like Lawson Humphreys is only, two less kickouts. 4 less kickouts than Max Holmes. So
and he didn't play much.
No, you just need avenues of scoring. Max Holmes hopefully gets over his injuries and rewards those people, but it's not a must-have, and I don't think it's going to hurt you much if you don't pick him and have to trade him in early.
Who do you like better out of him and Tom Stewart? Let us talk about these two in the same ilk. Tom Stewart has big potential. He was playing like absolute shit, and I had him in my team. I started with him, had to get rid of him. Then he started going absolutely ballistic in the midfield, in some sort of midfield defense hybrid role where he just absolutely went nuts.
If I had to pick one of them, it'd probably be Tom Stewart, just being a little bit cheaper. The DPP is nice, but generally you're not swapping defenders from, like, you're normally picking the better defender in the midfield and then moving them back. I think Tom Stewart's better. Yeah. Just proven history. I mean, checking out Max Holmes' stats, give me 1 sec. I don't think he's been even close to it any other years. So maybe last year was just a bit of a breakout. But from memory, kind of ever since Lawson Humphreys came into that backline as well, seemed to get a bit more of the ball compared to Max Holmes.
Yeah. Look, I'm going to say something completely controversial here. Besides, I'm liking Max Holmes more than Tom Stewart because I just don't trust Tom Stewart to play every single game. I think Lawson Humphreys is a better pick than both of them. I love him. I love how he plays. I think he's going to have a full year next year, and I think a bit of kick-outs, and I just love his run. I think he's a better pick than both of these players who are, pretty highly picked at 8% and 19%.
Yeah, I mean, Lawson Humphreys, he somewhat saved my SuperCoach season last year, got him at 117K, ended up at like 400, and started just popping out hundreds out of nowhere. Geelong is one of those teams where they'll put the ball in the good ball hands as used, like the good ball users' hands. Yeah. I think that's where Humphreys just works over Holmes. Mm-hmm. He is like Tom Stewart from 5 years ago, where just silky smooth, can run, bullet pass kicks wherever you want, no dramas. One of the deficiencies I think that a Max Holmes might have, but Holmes you'd think has to be kind of the next generation. As all the oldies start to retire, Holmes is one of the ones that they have to keep playing.
Yeah.
He has some decent Supercoach scores, but then he has a lot of 90s, a lot of 80s, and a couple of 70s in there as well. And that's not what you want, especially in games where they win. Like you want a good winning game to be a good score for him. And yeah, it's not great.
Yeah, I completely agree, mate. James Sicily, mate. Barras and Battle coming in the team, and I think that's going to hurt him. I hear that he's been pushed forward. That's not what I want from a defender to be going into the forward line. James Sicily is such a good defender, and he's such a good kind of interceptor and general back there. I think these blokes coming in the team's going to hurt him. Unless they, if they said, look, we're going to cover the two tools by Battle and Barras, and then he's going to be an interceptor, that'd be absolute gold. But they're pushing him a bit forward now, is what I've seen in the Pracky matches, mate. So he's not on the radar at all.
Yeah, I think if John Longmire's told us anything, coaches don't care about Supercoach, and I think that's what's happening with Sicily, right?
Yeah.
It seemed like they played better with him in that forward line, and it's really a position that they need that experienced leadership, someone who can stand up when the times get tough. I mean, Gunston's not doing much. I don't think Mitch Lewis and a couple of these other guys are going to be playing much this year. So they need someone there alongside Deer, who's apparently now injured as well. So I predict he's going to play forward. You don't bring in two good defenders and then and then keep Sicily in the spot. When you've got guys like Blank, you've got like Frost and a few others there as well. The swing man he is, and I think he'll be stuck in the forward line for a while. So
that's a perfect
analysis. To know, I'm happy to get him at 400k.
Yeah, I completely agree. Won't be going anywhere near Sicily this year. Bailey Dale, love the pick. Ed Richards pushing into the midfield. I don't see many players taking Bailey Dale's kind of like, the absolute monopoly he has back there, especially with Ed Richards going out. There is maybe Frazier. He might come in a little bit, but the only thing stopping me from Bailey Dale, if he had that round 13 bye, I'd be all about it, but it's such a busy round 12 bye, isn't it?
So much.
Yeah.
My backline at the moment, bit of spoilers for the fans, currently has Sheasel and McKercher in there as well, and I don't think I can get away with putting a Bailey Dale as the same bye round, so it really hurts. It really does. As you say, these kind of depleted teams, I mean, you look at the Dogs, if they have forward line injuries, Bont moves to the forward line a little bit, plays a bit more. Bailey Dale just plays halfback, takes kick-ins, does whatever he wants to do. No Caleb Daniel, which I don't know hurts him or gives him a little bit more of a benefit just because because Daniel didn't play as much. But yeah, he's the main man, took majority of their kick-ins, had 102 last year, and then the next person down had 68.
Yeah.
And then the next person down had 20.
Yeah.
So if you hate Sheasel, if you hate McKercher, if you hate half a dozen other people, Bailey Dale at 528k could be your guy. He just gets bevoed too much and has good games and then has games where he's locked in on the wing. And it's like, cool. There's a reason why he's, the price that he is, and there's a reason why he's not 600k. If you're taking 104 kickouts in a season, why are you not averaging more than 98?
I think he was subbed out by Bevo. Subbed out.
Been doing everything you can. Yeah, he just gets stuffed. Bevo just says, "Nah, you can play wing today. We're going to move people around and do whatever." That could happen now with a few other players coming back. So it's not great.
I would probably pick him if he didn't have such a busy buy. He's probably got the worst buy for my team. Yep. My structure already has too many, at least 5 premiums in that buy, and not including Caleb Daniel, which I'll also be carrying through that buy. So it's really busy. I can't afford to have a Dale. For some reason, if you don't like Barters Bont, Sheasel, Kirch, Tristan Sherry, Horn Francis, maybe Bailey Dale could be a nice sneaky pot at 3% of teams. He's got a good role and good monopoly back there.
Disposal efficiency is not the best either. Lots of 70s, lots of 80s throughout the game, which means there's quite a few 60s as well towards the start of the season. So you don't really want to have a player in your team playing halfback in Supercoach that 1 in 4 kicks goes to the opposition. It's not the best.
I'll just grab Nick Martin if I wanted something like that.
Well, yeah, exactly, right? And no round 12 bye. So,
Yes.
yeah, it's a bit rough.
Now let's talk about Colby McKercher because I was really keen on getting him in
Yep.
2025 when I was in 2024.
Yep.
But I was
What's
scared off.
changed?
I'll tell you what's changed, and maybe you can alleviate my concerns. Number one concern is that round 12 bye.
Okay. I
Round
can't do much about that.
You can't. And the next second thing is I thought he was going to be playing how Harry Sheezel played in the defense because he's such a good dynamic player. But I'm hearing him push up on the wing, which you know is a bit of a graveyard for Supercoach scoring, except maybe with the exception of Goulden. A bit on the half forward flank as well in the pracky matches. You got Zach Fisher still kicking back there. I don't know if he's best 22, but definitely got Cleb Daniel back there, and he's doing a lot of the rebounding. So, are you hearing wing role for McKercher?
I'm hearing everything roll, and the fact that it's everything roll just makes me happy. The ball's going to be in his hands as much as I think in Supercoach we get too convinced with this is going to be his role. That's it. No worries. This player is going to play midfield. That means he's going to score well. This player is going to play in the back line. That means he's going to score well. I think if you start hearing things like he's going to be around the ball as much as he can, we're going to use him as transition and things like that. Points come out of nowhere, man. I've got McKercher in my team. He's been playing a little bit on the wing. He's been playing a little bit half back and in the guts for the most part. If we watch some match hims and stuff and he pushes forward, that's because the ball's in the forward line. He might be that link-up guy, similar to maybe how a Short or a Tom Stewart work. They sit just behind the forward 50 line and then they kick the ball in or use that kind of lockdown. His ball kicking's fantastic. So they're going to use him as much as they can. I have no troubles with picking him. Okay. He's a second-year player and he's $476K.
So very expensive
that's just how good he is. Yeah. He's a very, very good player. He's going to be a primo next year in Supercoach, and he's currently in my team. Now, Supercoach Masters fans, maybe riz me in the chat, be like, Big J, what are you talking shit? North Melbourne supporter, but...
Is there a bit of bias in there? Is there a bit?
There is, but that's just because I know the player, and I've seen him at training and things like that. Yeah. If it was similar to Matt Roberts, I'm a Sydney fan, and I think Matt Roberts is going to go off, then fantastic. But this is a first-year player that was racking up 37 possessions as a first-year player.
In the back line.
And the club's come out and said, hey, he's going to be fantastic. There's no preseason injury watch. He's put on size, and he's busting his guts at training. All of the signs say yes. We just need him to say yes. That's all it is.
I just feel a lot more cozy in bed if he was playing in that back line still. That same role last year. He's getting so many kickouts, and he's doing... I loved how he done the 1-2 chips with the kicks.
Yeah, he does it still. He still does it. He just does it now from halfback and then runs to the midfield and runs through the wing and then kicks to the forward line player who scores a goal. The training reports and everything are saying the same thing. And that's the beautiful thing. When a player's quick and they have good skills, they can do that, and the club gives them permission to do that kind of stuff. Similar to maybe if we saw an Impey in the forward line a few years ago from Hawthorn, he would just get permission to get the ball and then run forward. That's similar to what we'll probably see a bit from McKercher this year.
I don't know what Impey scored, but hopefully it's enough to keep him.
He ended up being a keeper, so...
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. There's Colby for you, guys.
I like him.
What you think about it. Love the player. I'm not in love with the role, but we'll see how he goes. It'll be so fun to watch. So fun to cheer for as well. Moving on to someone at a similar price point, a lot friendlier by Trent Rivers. I know a couple of people have been speaking about him on their podcast, had an ear out for him, but personally, I don't like Rivers. I mean, I just don't like... when you look at a football and go, oh, I really like the way he plays. I didn't really get that from Rivers. I think he's all right. I just don't know if he's got breakout potential like, say, the McKerchers and Holmeses and all that. What are your thoughts on Trent Rivers?
It's a no from me with Rivers. I think it felt like a lot of his good scoring came from the opportunities with Petrarca and Oliver maybe not being so good last year. And obviously Brayshaw being out does free up a bit of a spot for him. But it's a no for me. If he's getting majority mid-time, a lot of his scoring is scoring 80s and 90s with mass CBAs. So it's a rough one, man. He'll have a big game, he'll go big, and then the next week he'll score like 80. And if that's what you're kind of looking for, fantastic. If you're playing draft, cool. 4th, 3rd, round pick, okay. Throw Rivers in there. The DPP is nice, but I think you're taking a bit less of a risk picking McKercher than you are a Rivers, and that's saying a lot. So, yeah.
There is that nice buy, though.
If there was no Oliver this year, if there was no Petrarca, if they were like, cool, we're going to throw mass games into him, okay, but it's just awkward. As you say, it's just awkward. Yeah, he does things and then does stupid shit, so
yeah,
not great.
Well, Jaden Short is someone who 9% of Supercoach teams have gravitated to in this bit of defensive shortage, mate. Horrible buy. Well, no, actually a really good buy, I should say. I just don't like him. Richmond probably will get smashed this year, and he'll have a lot of ball in defense, but it happened last year and he didn't really wow me.
Yep.
Yeah. Not for me.
Jaden Short is interesting. A lot of people are like, jump on Jaden Short. I think it's kind of like a couple of years ago, we used to have the likes of like Jack Siebel and stuff available in the forward line, player taking mass kickouts in a bad team. You'd expect a lot, right? But Richmond haven't been great the last few years, and he's never averaged over 100. And I don't know if that's going to change much. They're going to blood the kids as much as they can. Pick him at your own risk. If it comes out and like, hey, he's number one, whatever, preseason games looks fantastic, I can see a world where people pick him. Generally, we have a player in our teams around this price, unless you're going, mass, really expensive players and then not so much. It's just a no. I just don't like him, as you say.
Yeah. At that price point, you kind of almost have to be a keeper. And yeah, I would feel a lot more comfortable with a couple other guys. But watch his preseason. If he's doing all the kickouts, he's on kickout duties, then maybe that's something that can really kind of boost the kind of confidence in that pick. Matty Roberts was one we touched on earlier, mate. 5% of teams, I kind of feel like he has breakout contender written all over him. Is the buy too hard to look past, though?
Yes, but I think also just the player for myself is too much to go past. He had some beautiful games last year. Beautiful, beautiful games. And I think if he had, if Sydney had lost a few other players, I mean, if we had come out and said Nick Blakey's no longer playing at Sydney, if Jake Lloyd was no longer playing at Sydney, if a few of these other guys were no longer playing at Sydney, like Roberts, lock into your team straight away. But it just hurts me. He's not in my side. I think he's going to do well for some people, but that early buy stinks. And yeah, it's a no. It's a no.
That's a fair call, mate. Now, someone I want to talk about is only in 1% of teams. Generally, we don't talk about 1% of teams, but Harry Perryman, I think his ownership will grow. He's only been playing as a midfielder in Collingwood's pracky games, and as a midfielder, we have some really promising numbers from him. He has averaged over the 90 mark as a midfielder before. You think he'll be getting similar CBAs to what he did at the Giants in those years. Maybe there is a bit of concern about durability, but I think from 1% at that price point, sometimes you only got about 400 to spend the backline after you've done all your team and you're trying to fix up the backline. He could be one that's looked at, but as I said, he's got a really, really hard buy to look past, mate. You got any thoughts on Perry?
Yeah. I think it's going to be interesting what happens with Collingwood, especially without Houston in the team. And I think Perryman, obviously, if he's playing pure mid, then no worries, but they're going to have to move players around when Houston's there. If we had both playing in round zero, I could see a world where you chuck him in, no worries. I think a lot more are jumping on someone else that starts with a PE that's now gone to Adelaide in their midfields versus Perryman that's there. And as a non-Collingwood supporter, I look at the team and I'm like, where are we going to find another 90 to 100 plus scorer? Is everyone else going to now lose 10% worth of their scores to fit Perryman in?
Maybe the goalie. Maybe the goalie.
Yeah, potentially, but you'd assume that he plays at some point and he's playing, regular season games. So, yeah, it's just a rough one. You can't just keep putting good players into a team and expecting you've now got 18 players that are scoring 100 versus the probably 8 that we have in SuperCoach. So, I think there's some better options there.
Yeah. One to watch, though, that's for sure. 77% point average. Definitely could reward you if he has the right role. So keep an eye out on him, mate. And a couple of people got Josh Ward. I don't want to go too into it. I think he's a fantastic kid. He's a fantastic player. I don't know if he has a Supercoach friendly role. And until he does, I don't think we need to get too much more stuck into.
Yeah. There's two other players around that 400k price mark that I really like.
Tell me,
one being Lawson Humphreys that we spoke about a little bit off air. I think he's fantastic. Kind of second yearing this Geelong team. The kid just bullet passes wherever, and they're going to give him the ball as much as they can. Expect similar to his second half of the season scoring for the entire year, which could end up seeing him push 100 average at 418k, 100%. I think as well, one that's being very slept on is another mid-season draftee in Logan Evans at 370k.
Yeah.
Took a lot of the kickouts and is basically why I think I'm going to go out on a limb here. His performance in the second half of the season was like, cool, we don't need Houston. We still made finals without Houston in the team. And if you look at how good his scoring was, he's taking kickouts, he's pushing Farrell out of a position. He was very, very good. And a lot of people are questioning, does Farrell come in and he's taking the Dan Houston role? Is Sin coming in and taking the Dan Houston role? I think Logan Evans is a pretty good smoky for continuing how well he did last year. Give me one sec. Port Adelaide kick-ins. So Logan Evans in the second half of the season when he debuted in round 18 started to take bulk kick-ins, and from round 24 through the final series, basically was taking majority kick-ins alongside Ryan Burton. So at that price, it's not bad. We'll see what happens, but no Houston. I think he's going to be one of the big uptakes from that.
I'll tell you with Port Adelaide, it's really tricky to get a read on them because a lot of teams have an A team and a B team. They always mix it up and go head to head. I know I saw the Ratkins taking out some kickouts as well in his time there. Josh Sin is also back there, who's predicted to be out of contract, I think, this year and playing for some cash. Logan Evans is an absolute talent. Where he sits, I still think there's even without Houston, who didn't get many kick-ins from memory. I mean, maybe in the grand overall scheme of things, but Logan Evans could be one. We haven't seen enough of him, I don't think. There's 10 games. I'd like to see more of him. He's got a tricky buy unless you're just using him to bridge to another premium. Yeah, he's one to watch.
I think that's where a lot of people not scoff, but I kind of say, hey, watch out. A lot of people are saying Josh Sin, automatic lock into your team. You have to play him. And I'm like, it's not the truth, mate. You're paying up for someone that might not even, for one, play a lot, but then 200k versus some others. Joel Frieger's definitely one as well to watch out for at that price. Alex Keith's gone down, may take a few more kickouts. Definitely playing halfback at the moment at training. So if you've got 370k and you don't want Mills, or you have Mills and you don't have enough money for anyone else, potential breakout. You know much about Sam DeConning?
I know that he's worth it if he's played in the ruck, and I know he has been playing ruck in the Pracky games. However, I know that Conway has been out not playing those games. I think maybe they'll use him when kind of need be, but I can't say for certainty because Toby Conway hasn't been fit in those Pracky games. So I don't know if they're just using him for a bit of experience against, the Stanleys or whatever rucking combo. But I'm thinking they're going to go with Conway long term. And the Koenig is going to be taking the back line or forward line, but it's too unknown. There's not enough info on the table to make a accurate call on that yet. But if I had to guess, I'd say it'd be just used sporadically, not that number one ruck role we want.
Yeah, Geelong and Ruckman are really weird. I think they haven't had a good one for a very long time.
Haven't.
Going back to the days when they offered Goldstein a good contract 3 years ago, and he probably should have taken it.
Yeah.
They'll find who they need. I don't think Conway's the person. I think Brad Scott's a bit petty. And the fact that TDK is playing ruck, I think SDK is going to start playing ruck or continue to play ruck. We definitely saw times last year, and I think he's the pencil in. They've got no one else. Conway's there, okay. Shannon Neal's okay. But they're not breathing the house down. And DeConning, I think, ever since Guthrie came into the team in that backline, feels like, I don't know about yourself, but feels like he might have got pushed out a little bit. I know there was some SDK talk, hey, he wants to leave at some point, so maybe that was something as well. But yeah, opportunity for a lot of if you gutsy, man.
Yeah, if I see a Pracky game and he's getting some good ruck time, I think he's an easy pick. Completely undervalued as a ruckman, but fairly priced as a backline player. So,
Yeah.
but that being said, Conway is like what, first or second year player, so they still ruckman takes some time. They might persist with him. I don't think he was too bad actually for a young ruckman, Conway. So you really put him to the grill, mate. Didn't like
I think it's more just the fact that he is a young ruckman. And when you've got him playing against established players, he just falls over. Yeah. So blood him through the VFL if you have to, do whatever you need to do. But they need someone to play now to keep being competitive. And if that's they can't rely on Mark Blitzarves as much as they can, and Stanley like every single game. They need a dedicated person.
Someone that goes kind of without saying, Carl Mills, midfield role. We've seen what he can do as a premium midfielder. He's been over 600,000 in that midfield before. The 357 and the limited amount of options in here comes at a discounted price. He's priced at someone at about a 66 average, even though he averaged 73 last year, plus a midfield role. There is enough meat on the bone to pick him confidently this year, despite the durability concerns.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you think about his price value, as you say, 73 average, I think he can probably average a 90 given the role and whatnot, which would put him pretty close to 500K or a little bit over, depending on the time of the season. So if you think Callum Mills can average a 90, it's a bit of a no-brainer. Downgrade someone else, put Mills in your team, wait like 5 weeks, and then cool, upgrade to the next best primo. So doesn't have to play all year. I don't think he will play all year is kind of my prediction. I think there may be some injuries and whatnot coming off what he's come off. So he only got to play the first few games, man.
Yeah.
He gets a good early bye to get rested. He's not like he's got to play 12 games in a row straight away.
Yep. 58% of teams can't be wrong. I mean, you don't want to antipod someone who's a plain cash cow anyway. You got to pick him with a bit of confidence. And if he goes down, then everyone's in the same boat with you, mate. They're the main kind of defenders that you need to pick in your team. There are a couple of rookies and not rookies, so to speak, a bit of a higher priced cash cows, like, for example, Shoalmaker for St Kilda, who we spoke about a little bit before. He's such a nice kick, but is he? We can't even say for sure he's best 23 material at 270K.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if he scores an 80 and then someone like Trevelyan scores an 80, well, you're out 100K because he's more expensive and doesn't have DPP and isn't a lock for playing best 22, which kind of sucks. Kadeen Coleman, similar type of price, 269K. Dealing with a lot of injuries and whatnot at the moment. So he's still 32% owned, but that's 32% of people that probably haven't, touched their team since the start of December. Moving down that list, I've heard some people after Tom Dode. I think that's a similar issue. And then it kind of goes into like your Josh Sin type territory where it's like, I've heard that he's a lock from some people. I've heard some people say, hey, he's, fighting for a best 22 spot and they don't like his kicking and he can run. But, if you want to play halfback, you have to be a good disposal efficiency. And it's a weird one, man. In my team at the moment, I've gone Mills, bit of spoilers. I've got Mills at D5 and then just gone a rookie at D6. And it's like, cool. There's no one at that price point that I really care about. And if I can make some money and still pick a guy who's going to score 70 every week, then cool, no worries.
Yeah, for sure, man. It's with Coleman. He suffered an extra setback, so we won't be expecting him back for a good while. Dode, though, I'm not 100% turned off him. I mean, he has averaged 80 plus before. We haven't seen what he can do for Brisbane, and he is at that discounted price because he did miss it all last year. We're going to have to see a nice round zero performance. This is the beauty of some of these players. We can watch him in round zero. If he gets a nice, 90 to 100, you'd be probably one of the people just be picking him just based off that. Rory Atkins, I mean, we don't think he's much of a footballer, but if he's named and getting some kickouts, who knows, mate? But
it's
that's
funny,
the thing.
Rory
No one wants
Atkins
to spend money in the defense because there's so many good options in the midfield and the forward, and you got to get 2 good ruckmans because Flynn ain't going to cut it. So it's hard because people are playing rookies on the field, and then they want to go, I need a Josh Sin.
What are you expecting from a Sin? If you were to pick him at 229K, what are you expecting scoring wise? What makes him a viable pick? You want 60s? You want 70s? You want 80s or 90s? Like, what do you want?
I'd want 80s. I'd want 80s if I was to pick someone like a Sin, or else I'd just go down to a rookie and get some 70s.
I don't think you can do 80s. I think there's enough guys around that 170 to like 130K range that are going to score you 70s and 80s, at least to start the season. I don't think Sin's that guy. Look at their backline. They've lost Houston and kept everyone else.
And added Atkins.
Yeah. And Atkins. And Farrell's still injured and coming back. So there's another one that's not being accounted for in the preseason games. Like, too many questions.
There's also Wayne Malira, who's actually, again, missed the injury prone, but he's having a sensational preseason. His average is 67.3, but he's priced really nicely at a 47 kind of average. He is injury prone, but he does have a kind of a halfback / wing role. Can he play a role this year for us in our teams? Can he get maybe push for an 80?
Probably. I think Rory Laird moving back probably hampers his scoring a little bit. If it's Rory Laird and Miller, cool. If Miller is fit, then okay. Definitely he's done it before. He's been around that mark. I think his highest price is about 450K. And cool, if you think he's going to get there, then no worries. But it just goes back to what I was saying before, right? If you're going to get an 80 out of him, why not just get an 80 out of a rookie? And save yourself 100K.
How many rookies are going to get 80?
Like the forward line this year is where we're getting all these really good 200K cheapy players that I think the back line is just lock and load as much as you can and just ride the wave, I think.
Right, yeah. I think I've gone for a different strategy, mate. I've got about 2 rookies on the field in the defense. I'm still looking for a mid-pricer to kind of...
Okay. Different strategy then.
Mate, I need to get all my cash in the midfield ASAP. I've got a couple of premiums up forward as well. So defense for me, I've never spent a lot of money in the defense. I always neglect my defense, leak a lot of points, but we'll see how it works out. No one's really caught my eye for bang for buck the way that some other players with really nice buys do, but that's the beauty of SuperCoach, mate, and this is why, everyone's team can be a bit different. But look, if I can get Bo Allen scoring well and Travalga getting 70s, mate, I'm more than happy to play them in my D5 and D6.
But that's where you're not picking a Miller, though. You're saying, cool, I'm happy to get these guys, and then no Miller, and then there's no worries.
No, that's my D4.
Mills D1. Let's go.
It's I've got to do a team reveal soon, mate. So I just done Maddie's, and he's keen to do mine soon. So keep an eye out. You see some absolute. He's going to torch it. I went pretty hard on his team, so he's going to go pretty hard on my team, mate. But I think we've covered everyone that's important. And if we've missed anyone, let me know in the comments, and I'll probably reply saying they're not very relevant. If you have someone that we haven't spoken about, if you haven't already, go to the Center Bounce, subscribe to them, go on their Twitter X account, the Center Bounce, give them a follow as well. And Big J, thank you so much for coming on, mate. It was really nice chatting about the defenders with you. A little bit longer than what I thought it was going to be, but it's nice to have a chat about this and good to see someone with a different perspective on structure with the defense.
Oh, 100%. I mean, everyone's got their own point of view and things that they know and things that they don't know. So, yeah, just kind of figure your team out. Best thing is it's not round 1 tomorrow, so chop and change, press that reset button 8 times in the next week and just have fun.
Absolutely, mate. So thank you so much for jumping on the pod. It's been a pleasure to have you on. I hope I can go over to Center Bounce and come on one of yours sometime soon. And thanks for tuning in, guys. If you missed the other ones, there's a ruck, midfield and forward podcast. And also grab yourself some hoodies and polos. It's pretty hot, so get this nice dry fit. Now, let's catch you on the next one, mate. Cheers, Jay.
Catch you later. Thanks for having me.
Cheers, mate. Anytime.